I still remember that moment vividly, not because it was loud, but because in the middle of a room full of laughter, I heard a very distinct silence. A silence inside myself. It was the night my father retired. A luxury ballroom in Connecticut. Crystal chandeliers, champagne, 200 perfectly dressed people, laughing and talking as if everything in their lives was exactly on track. And at the center of it all was my father, Richard Evans, a man everyone admired. A man who, in all 32 years of my life, had never truly seen me. He stood on stage holding a microphone introducing each member of the family, my stepmother, my younger brother. Each name came with a story, a moment of pride, a round of applause. And then, it was my turn. I knew that moment would come. I had prepared for it. At least, I thought I had. He looked at me, smiled, the kind of smile outsiders would call warm, but I knew exactly how cold it really was. And this is my daughter, Heather. He paused, just long enough for the room to focus. No degree. A few soft chuckles. No career. More people started laughing. Just living off the family. 200 people burst into laughter. Not the awkward kind. The real kind. As if they had just heard a genuinely funny joke. I didn't cry. I didn't react. I didn't do anything. Because it wasn't the first time. It was just the first time. It happened in front of 200 people. I sat there quietly, holding my glass of champagne, listening to the laughter echo around me. And in that moment, I realized something very clearly. It wasn't that I wasn't good enough. It was that I had never belonged here. I stood up. Slowly. No rush. No one expected it. I could feel their eyes shift, from curiosity to anticipation. They thought I would cry, or run, or do something foolish. But I didn't. I simply raised my glass, looked straight at him. Congratulations, Dad. My voice was so calm, it surprised even me. 40 years of a career. I paused, just like he did. You've taught me a lot. No one was laughing anymore. About hard work, about sacrifice, and about how loyal a family can be. The atmosphere began to change. I could feel it. So, I raised my glass a little higher. Cheers. A few people swallowed nervously. This will be the last time. I looked around the room. Any of you will see me. I placed the glass down, didn't drink, didn't turn back. I simply walked away. The sound of my heels echoed across the wooden floor. Clear, steady. In a room that just 10 seconds ago was filled with laughter, now there was only silence. And when the door closed behind me, for the first time in over a decade, I could breathe. But that wasn't the worst part. Because this story didn't begin that night. It began 12 years earlier, the day I realized I wasn't just being overlooked. I had been erased from my own family. I used to think my family was normal. Not perfect, but warm enough. Until I realized there are families that don't need to hit you, don't need to yell at you, and can still make you disappear. My name is Charlotte Evans. I'm 32 years old. And if you looked at my family from the outside, you would see something almost perfect. A 6-bedroom colonial house in Fairfield, a lawn trimmed neatly every week, a Mercedes parked precisely in the garage, weekend gatherings filled with friends, business partners, laughter, and firm handshakes. My father, Richard Evans, CEO of a mid-sized logistics company, a man everyone respected. And also the man who never truly saw me. My mother died when I was 8. Cancer. Fast, cold, and far too early for a child to understand what was happening. I don't remember her face clearly, but I remember her hands. Soft, warm, always reaching for mine whenever I was afraid. After the funeral, the house stayed the same. Still large, still beautiful. Just no longer a home. 2 years later, my father remarried. Her name was Linda. She came with a 13-year-old son. Ethan, 3 years older than me. Things changed, but not in a loud way. There were no arguments, no obvious conflict. Just a slow shift. At first it was small things. Dinner time, Ethan was asked about his grades. I wasn't. Birthdays, he had his own cake. Mine was combined for convenience. Christmas gifts, he got new things. I received his old ones. No one said anything. No one explained. And that was what made it dangerous. Because when nothing is clearly wrong, you start wondering if the problem is you. I learned to stay quiet. Not because I was well behaved, but because I understood. Speaking up wouldn't change anything. My father never yelled at me. He never hit me. He wasn't even annoyed. He just didn't react. Like I was part of the room. There, but not worth noticing. Linda was different. Always gentle, always smiling, always saying the right things. Girls don't need too much pressure, Charlotte. What matters is that you have a stable life later. Not everyone needs to be successful like Ethan. It sounded caring. But if you listened long enough, you would understand. It wasn't comfort. It was a polite way of saying, you don't need to try. And Ethan. He didn't have to do anything. He just had to exist, and everything revolved around him. Good grades praise. Average grades still praise. Mistakes explained away. Me. I learned something very early. No one expected anything from me. And when no one expects anything, you have two choices. Give up. Or become invisible. I chose the second. I didn't cause trouble, didn't ask for anything, didn't argue. I studied hard. Not to be praised, but to avoid attention. Because if you wait enough, they leave you alone. And for years, that's how I lived. Like a shadow. Moving through rooms, without leaving a trace. There was only one person who truly saw me. My grandmother, Margaret Evans, my father's mother. She didn't live with us, but every Sunday, she called. Not to ask if I was behaving, not to ask about grades. But, how did you feel this week? Such a simple question. But the only one that made me feel like I existed. You remind me of myself when I was young, she once said. People often underestimate those who aren't loud. I didn't fully understand it back then. I only knew, when I talked to her, I didn't have to make myself smaller. She was the only one who didn't look through me. And maybe, the only one who truly understood what was happening in that house. But even she couldn't change it. Because some things, once they become normal, no one questions them anymore. I grew up in a complete family, but I never had a place in it. And then, when I turned 20, for the first time in my life, I thought things could change. I had a scholarship, a plan, a path. A real chance to step out of that shadow. I thought this was it. The moment. The first time I could become someone. But I was wrong. Because that was also the day my future was decided by people who never believed I had one. I still remember that day, a random weekday afternoon. Nothing special, no warning signs, just a phone call. Come home this weekend, my father said. We need to talk. Family. The word family, in my house, was never a good sign. At the time, I was a sophomore at the University of Connecticut, business administration major, GPA 3.8. For the first time in my life, I had a plan, a path I had drawn for myself. I had an application ready for a summer program in London. Finished. All I had to do was submit it. For the first time, I wasn't living in someone else's shadow. I went home that Friday night. The house looked the same, clean, quiet, perfect. But the atmosphere was different, heavy, rigid, like everything had already been decided. Before I even walked in, my father was in his office. The large wooden desk, walls covered in degrees. Linda stood beside him, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder, a small gesture that said everything. They were a team, and I was not part of it. Sit down, Charlotte. I sat, back straight, hands on my lap, waiting, not asking. I had learned asking didn't change anything. My father didn't look at me right away. He flipped through a few papers, like he was preparing a speech. We need to talk about the family's finances. His voice was steady, emotionless. I said nothing. The company hasn't been stable lately. We have to make some difficult decisions. Still, silence. But in my head, I already knew where this was going. Ethan has been accepted into the MBA program at Wharton. Linda smiled softly, proud. It's a huge opportunity. I nodded, slowly, not because I was happy, but because I was waiting for the rest. And then, it came. We can't afford both. My father finally looked at me. So, we've decided. A pause. You will take a break from school. Not we should discuss this. Not what do you think. Just, we've decided. I didn't cry. I didn't react. Not because I was strong, but because I was used to it. Still, there was something in me that hadn't died completely. A small part that still hoped. You promised. I heard my own voice. Quiet, but clear. You promised, Mom. You would take care of my education. The room shifted. Linda's hand tightened slightly on his shoulder. My father was silent for a moment. Then he said, circumstances change. 4 words. Light. As if they carried no responsibility at all. This is only temporary, he added. When things get better, I'll make it up to you. He never would. I knew it right then. Not because he was lying, but because I understood how he saw me. I wasn't an investment, I was an expense. Linda spoke next. Her voice was gentle, sweet, but every word cut deep. Girls don't need too much pressure, Charlotte. You can still have a good life. You'll meet a good man someday. And everything will be fine. That's when I understood. It wasn't that they didn't have the money, it was that they didn't want to spend it on me. I sat there, looking at the two of them. A perfect pair, aligned, no doubt, no hesitation. My future had been handed away, like something tradable, for a future they considered more valuable. I could have argued. I could have yelled. I could have cried. But I didn't, because in that moment, I realized something cold. It wasn't that they didn't understand me. It was that they never wanted to. I nodded. That was it. I understand. My father exhaled softly, like a problem had just been solved. Linda smiled. Ethan wasn't there that night. He didn't need to be. This decision didn't require his presence, because it had always been about him. That night, I went back to my old room. Everything was exactly the same, as if I had never left, as if my life could be paused whenever they wanted. I sat on the bed, looking at the application. Unsubmitted, no chance, and never would be. I didn't cry. Not then, just a vast emptiness opened inside me. But in that emptiness, I made a decision. For the first time, For myself. I would leave. No permission, no return, no proving, no explaining. Just leave. And that was the last time I let anyone decide my worth. But I didn't know where that decision would take me, because what waited ahead was not immediate freedom. It was a phase where I would have to learn how to survive, when there was no one left standing behind me. I left that house, without an argument, no tears, no goodbye. I just left. One small suitcase, a few sets of clothes, and $2,000 in my account. That was everything I carried with me, as I stepped out of the life that had been planned for me for 20 years. I didn't tell anyone. No warning, no note. Because I knew no one was really waiting for me to stay. I went to Boston, a city where I knew no one. No family, no friends. No one to call when things became too much. My first apartment wasn't really an apartment. A 3-5 square meter studio, above a laundromat, old, damp, loud. The heater rattled all night like it was about to explode. The walls were so thin I could hear my neighbor's TV clearly. The smell of detergent clung to everything. But it was the first place that was mine. No one could throw me out of it. No one could decide whether I deserved to be there. The first days, there was nothing beautiful about a fresh start. No sense of freedom, only a very real pressure. Rent, food, electricity, and a fear I had never faced before. The fear of not being enough. I worked at a cafe in the mornings. Shift started at 5 a.m., behind the counter, making coffee, cleaning tables, smiling at people I didn't know. At night, I worked at a convenience store, standing at the register, scanning items, counting cash, repeat. Some days, I worked 14 hours. Some meals were just instant noodles and stale bread. Some nights, I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering where I had gone wrong. Not wrong for leaving, but why I had to leave like that. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the silence. No calls, no messages. Not once did anyone ask, "Are you okay?" As if I had never existed, as if my disappearance left no gap at all. I used to think, at least they would care. Even just a little, but no, nothing. And that taught me something very clearly. I had nothing to go back to, and when you have no way back, you only have one choice: move forward. I started looking for something more stable. Not passion, survival. An administrative assistant position at a small logistics company. Minimum pay. No competition. No one wanted it. I took it. No hesitation. The owner, Walter Hayes. A difficult man, quiet, not interested in anyone's feelings. But he had something my family never gave me. He saw me, not with sympathy, but with judgment. One day, while I was reorganizing files, he stood behind me, watched for a moment, then said, "You shouldn't be in this position." I turned, confused. "What do you mean?" "You're faster than the others," he said. "You look at problems, not just follow instructions." He paused. "You've got a brain, use it." That was the first time, in years, someone told me I had value. Not because of who I belonged to, not because I fit a role, but because of me. I started staying late. No one asked me to. I learned how the system worked: shipping processes, inventory management, route optimization, things I had only studied in books before. Now, I was living them. Day work, night learning, free courses, MIT, Coursera, YouTube. No one knew. No one needed to know. I didn't call home, didn't ask for money, didn't share anything. When my birthday came, a card arrived. No handwriting, no message, just a $50 check. from family. I looked at it for a few seconds, then tore it in half, threw it away. Not because of the money, but because I didn't want anything from them anymore. I had spent 20 years trying to be acknowledged. Now, I didn't need it, but there was one thing I didn't understand back then. The silence they taught me, the thing that made me invisible, was also the thing that was helping me rebuild everything, quietly. No one knew. No one stopped me. No one interfered. I was no longer the girl waiting to be seen. I became someone who created her own value, piece by piece, day by day. And then, 4 years after I left, I did something even I didn't think I could do. I started my own company. No one congratulated me. No one knew. No one believed. But it didn't matter anymore. Because this time, I wasn't doing it to be seen. I was doing it because I knew I could. But what I didn't know was that decision would lead me back to my own family, in a way they could never have imagined. I didn't start my company with a perfect plan. No investors, no team, no one backing me. Just a laptop, a rented desk in a shared workspace, and a decision I had been thinking about for months. I wasn't going to work for anyone else anymore. Not because I was ready, but because I understood, if I kept waiting until I was good enough, I would never begin. The company was called Northbridge Consulting. A neutral name, no identity behind it, no personal attachment, no trace. I did that on purpose. Not because I was afraid of failure, but because I understood my family. If they knew what I was building, they would either dismiss it or try to control it. And I wanted neither. So, I became invisible again. But this time, not to hide. To build. The first few months, there was nothing you could call success. No clients, no revenue, just unanswered emails, unreturned calls, rejected proposals. There were days. I opened my laptop at 7 a.m. and closed it at 11 p.m. with nothing to show for it. And in those moments, a familiar voice came back. Maybe they were right. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm wasting my time. But this time, there was something different. I didn't need anyone's validation anymore. I just needed to keep going. My first client came by accident. A small shipping company on the outskirts of Boston. They had operational cost issues. Nothing big, nothing complex. But enough for me to prove something. I didn't just study. I understood. I reanalyzed their entire system. Optimized routes, reduced wait times, cut unnecessary costs. 3 weeks later, their operating costs dropped by nearly 18%. They couldn't believe it. Neither could I. But for the first time, I saw real results from everything I had been quietly learning for years. From that point on, things started to change. Slowly, but steadily. One client referred another. A small contract, then a bigger one. I didn't advertise, didn't build a personal brand, didn't show up anywhere. Everything went through the company. Through emails, through lawyers, through other names. I stayed behind the scenes. Always. And that became my greatest advantage. No one knew who I was. No expectations, no bias. They only looked at results. And results don't lie. 2 years later, I wasn't working alone anymore. I hired my first employee, then another, then a CFO. Daniel Carter, the man who would later become my right hand. He didn't ask too many questions, didn't dig into the past, only cared about numbers. And that made me trust him. The company began to have structure, systems, processes. It was no longer about survival. It became something real. There were mornings I walked into the office, saw my team, and had to pause for a few seconds, just to believe this was real. Not luck, not a dream, but the result of thousands of hours no one had ever seen. Still, there was one rule I never broke: anonymity. No LinkedIn, no interviews, no public appearances. Every contract signed under the company's name. Every high-level communication handled by Daniel or legal counsel. I didn't exist in the business world. And that was exactly what I wanted. Because I understood something very clearly. When people can't see you, they can't hurt you. But there was something I didn't realize back then. When you build something big enough, no matter how well you hide, the world eventually starts paying attention. And when that happens, the things you tried to avoid will find you. 3 years after I started, Northbridge Consulting was generating over $4 million a year. 15 employees, an office in Back Bay. A position that, 12 years ago, no one in my family believed I could ever reach. I bought my first watch. Not to show off, but to remember. No one gave this to me. I built it. But the most ironic part wasn't my success. It was one of our biggest clients. A name that when Daniel added it to the list, I stared at for a long time. Evans Logistics. My father's company. They didn't know. No one knew. The contract was signed through layers of intermediaries. Everything legal. Everything clean. We handled route optimization, warehouse management, cost reduction. The result? My father's company cut nearly 40% of its operating costs, became more efficient than ever. And every time he stood in front of partners, proudly talking about his strategic partner, he had no idea. The person behind it all was the daughter he once called useless. I could have said something, revealed everything, turned the situation around much earlier. But I didn't. Not because I forgave them, but because I didn't need to do anything. I didn't need to prove anything. I didn't need revenge. I just needed to keep going. And then a letter arrived. A letter I almost threw away. If I had, maybe things would have been different. A gold-embossed invitation. Richard Evans cordially invites. His retirement party. 40 years of a career. I stared at it for a long time. Part of me said, "Don't go, it's not worth it." But another part of me was very calm. Very clear. Not because I wanted reconciliation. Not because I hoped they had changed. But because I knew. With certainty. On a night like that, my father would do something. Something that would leave no way back. And this time, I wanted to be there. Not to be hurt, but to end it. But I didn't know how far that moment would go. I arrived 15 minutes early. Not because I was eager, but because I wanted time to observe. Fairfield Country Club looked exactly the same as I remembered. Nothing had changed. The same crystal chandeliers shimmering overhead, the same thick carpets that swallowed every footstep, the same people, perfectly dressed, telling perfect stories while hiding imperfect truths. Only one thing was different. Me. I wore a simple black dress, not too striking, but enough to make people look a second longer. My grandmother's pearl earrings, the watch I bought with my own money. Not to prove anything, but to remind myself. I was no longer the 20-year-old girl they once knew. The moment I walked in, Linda saw me. She always did. She had a special ability to notice things that shouldn't be there. Charlotte. Her voice was soft, but her eyes were not warm. So you actually came. Not a question. A statement. I smiled. I received the invitation. Her eyes moved quickly over me. Hair, dress, bag. Evaluating, comparing, classifying. Your father wasn't sure you had something appropriate to wear. She said it gently, as if she cared. I nodded. Good thing I came prepared. The air between us was always like this. No raised voices. But always something stretched tight beneath the surface. She didn't respond. Just smiled. Turned away. As if I were just a minor detail, not worth keeping in the frame. Inside the ballroom, about 200 people. Businessmen, lawyers, partners. People who had shaken my father's hand dozens of times. No one recognized me. And that felt more comforting than I expected. I found my seat. Table 14. Near the service door. Far from the stage. Far from family. I wasn't surprised. Just noting it. Once again, I had been placed exactly where I belonged. Not at the center. A waiter handed me a glass of champagne. I took it. Looked around. And then, I saw him. My father. Standing among a group of people. Laughing, talking, shining. Just like always. His eyes passed over me. Paused for exactly 1 second. A slight nod. Then moved on. No surprise, no emoción. Nothing. As if I were just another guest. Of no importance. And maybe, to him, that's exactly what I was. I sat down. Didn't engage. Just observed. Listened. There's an advantage to being invisible. People speak more honestly. Across the room, I heard my father's voice. Northbridge Consulting completely changed how we operate. He said it with pride. Our costs dropped nearly 40%. Efficiency improved significantly. A gray-haired man asked, "Who's behind that company?" My father shrugged. Never met them in person. Very discreet. But I don't care who they are, as long as they keep delivering results. I took a sip of champagne. Slowly. To hide the smile. Strange. Hearing the man who once called you useless praise your work. Without even knowing. My phone vibrated. A message from Daniel. Evans Logistics sent a renewal contract. 5 years, plus 12%. I looked at the screen for a few seconds, then replied, "Wait for my decision." I put the phone down, looked back at the room. Everything was still normal. But in my mind, something had started to shift. I hadn't decided yet. Keep the contract, or end it. Separate business, or let everything collide. But I knew. Tonight would decide. I stood up, walked toward the bar. Not because I needed another drink, but because I needed to move. And there, I ran into exactly who I expected. Extended family. The kind of people who always know everything, but understand nothing. Charlotte? A woman's voice. Surprised. Quickly turning into pity. Aunt Susan. Linda's sister. Oh my God, I almost didn't recognize you. Her eyes scanned me. You look fine. A pause. As if searching for a better word. You're still in Boston, right? What do you do again? Consulting. I said it simply. Supply chain management. Oh. She nodded. But her eyes said something else. That's cute. Cute. Not impressive. Not good. Just cute. Another man stepped in. Uncle David. Richard said you're still figuring things out. He smiled lightly. It's okay. Not everyone succeeds early. I understood immediately. My father had already spoken about me. Prepared the narrative. Created an image. A failed Charlotte. So no one would question anything. I heard you had some struggles after leaving school. Aunt Susan lowered her voice. Emotionally. But you're so strong for coming tonight. I tightened my grip on the champagne glass. Not from pain, but from the boldness of the lie. I smiled. I'm fine. In fact, I'm doing very well. They exchanged a look. A familiar one. She doesn't know what she's saying. I didn't explain further. No need. Because I knew. Some people will never believe you. Until they are forced to. I left the bar. Stepped out onto the balcony. Cooler air. Quieter. But I wasn't alone. Finally decided to show up. A voice behind me. I didn't need to turn around. Eitan. He walked closer. Expensive cologne. Perfect suit. Confidence. Almost artificial. I thought you wouldn't dare come. I turned. Looked straight at him. Why wouldn't I? He smirked. Because you know where you stand. I didn't answer immediately. Just looked at him. For a long moment. He continued. I heard you started some company. How long before it goes bankrupt? I could have told him. Right then. Ended everything immediately. But I didn't. Because I knew. The stage wasn't ready yet. You can keep thinking that, I said calmly. Then walked past him. Before leaving, I paused for a second. After tonight, I turned slightly. You're going to wish you treated me differently. He laughed. Loud. Like I had just told a joke. But I didn't turn back. Inside, the lights dimmed. Music softened. People returned to their seats. The speech was about to begin. I walked back to my table, sat down, placed the champagne glass in front of me, looked at the stage. My father stepped up. Applause filled the room. Loud, long, proud. A man ending his career in glory. And me, sitting in the corner, waiting, not to be acknowledged, but to end everything. What I didn't know was that in just a few minutes, everything would go further than I had ever imagined. The lights in the ballroom slowly dimmed, the music softened, everyone returned to their seats. Conversations faded, making way for the moment everyone had been waiting for, my father's moment. Richard Evans. He stepped onto the stage, slow, confident. Applause filled the room, long, sustained. A man, closing a 40-year career with a perfect speech. I sat at table 14, the farthest corner of the room, watching. No emotion, just observing. Thank you, everyone. His voice carried across the room. Warm, steady, well-practiced. He spoke about the journey, the difficult years, the right decisions, the success. Everything flowed, exactly as expected, until he started talking about family. I wouldn't be standing here today without the most important people in my life. He looked down at the front row. Linda smiled, hand over her chest. My wife, Linda. Applause. Long. 30 years by my side. Putting up with late nights, endless travel. He smiled. The room laughed with him. She's the reason I could focus on building all of this. Linda wiped the corner of her eye. Perfect. Then and my son Ethan. His tone shifted. Proud. Clear. The one who will take over the company starting this January. A louder round of applause. Ethan stood, nodded, smiled. As if everything had always been destined this way. A perfect future. A perfect successor. Then, his eyes found me. I knew that moment would come, but I didn't know how far it would go. And he paused. My daughter. The spotlight turned, directly on me. 200 eyes. At once, I didn't look down, didn't turn away. I looked straight ahead. Charlotte, he said my name, like introducing something insignificant. A few people turned to each other, waiting. No degree. A few small laughs. I heard them. Clearly, no real career. The laughter grew. Spread. I think she's still trying to figure things out. Someone at a nearby table laughed out loud. But that's okay, he continued. Light. Like telling a story. Not everyone is born to succeed. The entire room laughed. This time, no restraint. I didn't move, didn't react, not because I felt nothing, but because I had felt this too many times before. Just never in front of 200 people. He wasn't finished. At least, she knows how to show up at the right time. He chuckled. Maybe the next step is finding a good man to take care of her. A wave of laughter, loud, genuine. Like this was the best part of the speech. I sat there, in the middle of it all, the laughter, the eyes, the judgment. And in that moment, I realized something very clearly. There was nothing left to save, nothing left to hold on to, nothing left to hope for. I thought tonight would be an ending, but I was wrong. This wasn't an ending. This was the point of no return. I stood up, slowly. No rush. No one expected it. The laughter began to fade. Eyes shifted, from amusement to curiosity. My father hesitated. Just for a second. But enough. For me to see he no longer controlled this moment. I picked up my glass of champagne, raised it. No trembling. No hesitation. Congratulations, Dad. My voice carried. Clear. Loud enough for the entire room to hear. No microphone needed. Silence began to spread. 40 years. I looked straight at him. Impressive. No one laughed anymore. I've learned a lot from you. I paused. About work, about sacrifice, and about how a family treats each other. The air shifted, visibly. People started glancing at each other. Uncomfortable. So, I raised my glass a little higher. Cheers. No one lifted theirs. No one dared. This will be the last time. I looked around the room. Slowly. Any of you see me? I placed the glass down. Didn't drink. Didn't wait for a reaction. Didn't need one. I turned and walked away. The sound of my heels echoed across the wooden floor. Clear. Steady. Not fast. Not slow. Just certain. Behind me, there was no laughter. No voices. Only silence. A silence so heavy, it could be felt. I didn't turn back. Didn't look. Didn't need to. The doors opened. The air outside was colder, but easier to breathe. And when the doors closed behind me, I knew. Everything had changed. But I didn't yet know what would come next, because I wasn't the only one who couldn't go back after that moment. The ballroom doors closed behind me. The sound cut off. No more laughter, no more clinking glasses. Only the cold night air. I stepped down the stairs, took a deep breath. Slow. For the first time in years, I felt like I was actually breathing. Not just existing. Breathing. I walked toward the parking lot. My heels echoed softly against the stone. Steady, light, unhurried. I was almost at my car when I heard footsteps behind me. Fast. Sharp. Charlotte. Linda. Her voice was higher now. Sharper. No softness left. I didn't stop immediately, just slowed down enough for her to catch up. What do you think you're doing? She grabbed my arm, pulled me back. Harder than necessary. I looked down at her hand, then back at her. Said nothing. She let go. As if realizing I was no longer someone she could control like that. You just embarrassed your father in front of 200 people. Her voice trembled. Not from hurt. From anger. I tilted my head slightly. I embarrassed him. I asked. Calm. Where do you think all of this started? She froze. For a second. But not long enough. That was just a joke, she snapped. You know him. I nodded. Yes. I know him very well. Another voice cut in. Low, heavy. Go back inside. My father. Standing behind her. The light from the doorway cast half his face in shadow. Apologize. Not a request. An order. I looked at him. For a long moment. For the first time. Without fear. No. One word. Short, clear. Unshaken. The air stopped. This is not a choice. He stepped closer. I'm your father. I'm telling you what to do. I let out a small laugh. Not amused. Just unafraid. You're telling me to go back and let you turn me into a joke again. His jaw tightened. It was a joke. No. I shook my head. That's how you see me. Silence. Heavy, very heavy. Ethan appeared behind him. Arms crossed. Looking at me like I had done something ridiculous. You've always been like this, he said, overreacting. I turned to him. Do you really think that? He shrugged. You left. You failed. And now you come back, trying to get attention. It's all because you can't handle not being important. Those words, 12 years ago, would have broken me. But now, they only made one thing clear. They needed to believe that story. Because if they didn't, their entire world would fall apart. I opened the car door, paused, turned back to look at them. Dad just said. I looked straight at him. If I leave, I lose everything. He didn't answer. Just stared. Waiting. I nodded. You're wrong. My voice was soft, but every word landed clearly. I lost everything, 12 years ago. Linda inhaled sharply, like she wanted to say something, but couldn't. I got into the car. My father took another step forward. Charlotte. His voice was lower now. Not an order anymore. A warning. If you leave tonight, don't come back. I paused for a second. Hands on the wheel. Looking straight ahead. Then said, Don't worry. I won't. I started the engine. The car vibrated softly. Headlights turned on. Shining directly at them. 3 figures, standing in that light. For the first time, not above me. No power, no control. Just people who didn't understand what was happening. I pressed the gas. The car moved. Slowly. Then faster. In the rearview mirror, they grew smaller. Smaller. Until they disappeared completely. I drove in silence. No music. No thoughts. Just a strange emptiness. Not pain. Not relief. Something in between. I pulled into a rest stop. Turned off the engine. Sat still. Hands still on the wheel. And for the first time, after everything, I allowed myself to think. Was it over? Or was this just the beginning? My phone vibrated. A message. From Daniel. We need a decision on the Evans Logistics contract. I looked at the screen. For a long time. Then set the phone down. Took a slow breath. Because I knew. This moment was the one that truly mattered. Not what just happened in that ballroom. Not what they said. But what I would do next. Keep the contract. Or end it. Hold on to the past. Or cut it off completely. I thought this decision would be hard. But in that moment, everything became clear. I picked up my phone. Typed a reply. Just one line. Prepare to terminate the contract. They didn't know. None of them knew that the game had already changed. And this time, I wasn't the one backed into a corner anymore. The next morning, I woke up in my apartment in Boston. No noise. No drama. No one knocking on the door. Everything was strangely quiet. But I knew this silence wouldn't last. My family was not the kind of people who accepted losing control, They wouldn't let last night end like that. They would rewrite it, in their own way. And just like I expected, it started. Not with a call, but with a flood of messages. Charlotte, I heard about last night. Your father says you're not doing well. Do you need help? We're worried about you. Concern, care, warm on the surface. But I had read enough to understand. The story had already been written. I was the problem. The unstable one. The emotional one. The one who caused a scene. I didn't reply. Didn't explain. Didn't react. Because I knew they didn't actually want to understand. They just needed that version of the story to be true. Then came the first call. An unknown number from Connecticut. I picked up. Miss Evans. A male voice. Polite. Professional. This is Michael Carter, partner at Evans Logistics. I paused for a second. What do you want? Richard would like to speak with you. I let out a quiet laugh. He knows how to call me directly. He thinks it's better to go through the company. I understood immediately. He wasn't reaching out as a father, but as a CEO, losing control. We've heard some interesting information, Michael continued, about one of our partners. I said nothing, just waited. Northbridge Consulting. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake, only a sharp clarity. Apparently someone saw you at one of their offices. Probably a misunderstanding, I said. My voice steady. Maybe, he replied. But Richard thinks it's best to clarify. I looked out the window. Boston looked the same as always. No one knew. Something had already begun to shift. I have nothing to say. I hung up, no extra words. But in my mind, everything was clear. They were starting to suspect. Not certain yet, but enough to begin searching. And once they started searching, they wouldn't stop. Meanwhile, in Connecticut, things weren't quiet. I wasn't there, but I knew exactly what was happening. A meeting. Large conference room. Long table. Glass. Clean. Cold. My father walked in, expecting a normal meeting. But the atmosphere was different. His CFO was already seated. Tense. We have a problem. My father frowned. What problem? Northbridge Consulting. A name he had praised just the night before. What about them? Our contract is about to expire. I know, but they haven't responded to the renewal. He paused. Send it again. We did. 3 times. No response. The air in the room shifted. Call them directly. We tried. No meetings. No identity. No one knows who's behind them. My father clenched his jaw. Then find out. Whatever it takes. Silence. Then the CFO spoke. Slowly. Richard, if they pull out, we lose around 40% of our operational efficiency. Not a small hit. Not a minor inconvenience. 40%. A number that could destroy a company. How long to replace them? At least 18 months. In the best case scenario, no one spoke, because everyone understood. 18 months was too long. My father looked down at the table, said nothing, but in his mind, a question began to form. Why? Why now? Why right after last night? Why after I walked away? He didn't have the answer yet, but he started to suspect. And when a man like him starts to suspect, he digs until he finds the truth. But there was one thing he still didn't know. The answer wasn't far away. It had always been there, right in front of him. He just never chose to see it. That afternoon, I sat in my office. Daniel stood across from me. We're ready to send the notice. I nodded. Send it. No hesitation. No second thoughts. No turning back. 30 days, he said. After that? Full termination. I looked at the screen. The contract. The terms. Everything clear. Legal. Unquestionable. Send it. One word. Soft. But enough to trigger a chain reaction no one in my family could control. They still didn't know. Didn't know who was behind it. didn't know what was really happening, and when they finally found out, nothing would ever be the same again. Monday, 9 a.m. An envelope was placed on my father's desk. No flashy logo, no special markings, just a plain white envelope. Express delivery, signed for by his assistant. Something completely ordinary, but sometimes, the most ordinary things are the ones that destroy everything. My father opened it, not in a hurry, not expecting anything, until he read the first line. His eyes stopped. Fixed, didn't move. The room went silent. His assistant stood across from him, sensing something was wrong. "Is everything all right, sir?" No answer, only a long pause. Then he kept reading, slower, more carefully, as if every word needed to be verified. "Dear Dad," just those two words were enough to make him look up, scanning the room, as if searching for an explanation. But there was none. He looked back at the letter, continued, "I want you to know one thing. The company you call the backbone of Evans Logistics, Northbridge Consulting, is mine." No one spoke. No one breathed too loudly. Time seemed to stop. For a few seconds. My father didn't blink. Didn't react. Just read. Read again. As if he couldn't believe what was in front of him. "I built it. I own it. For the past 3 years, the person you called useless has been the one keeping your company alive." His hand tightened around the paper. A crease formed. Sharp, visible, unhideable. His assistant saw it, but didn't dare say anything. Didn't dare ask. Because she knew this was no longer a normal moment. This was everything beginning to collapse. Ending the contract is not revenge. It is a boundary. My father swallowed. For the first time in years, he couldn't control his expression. "I don't need an apology. I don't need you to understand. I just need you to know I was never what you said I was." A pause. In the letter, but in that room, it stretched. "I'm not coming back. Do not contact me again. Charlotte Margaret Evans." Margaret, my grandmother's name. My father stared at it, as if it carried a memory he didn't want to face. There was something else in the envelope. He opened it. Slowly. Thick paper. Clean print. Company registration. Northbridge Consulting. Owner Charlotte Evans. No room for doubt. No room for denial. The truth. Printed. Clear. Cold. Unemotional. And unchangeable. He let the paper fall onto the desk. Not because he wanted to, but because his hand couldn't hold it anymore. His phone vibrated. A call. He didn't look, didn't answer. Then a message. Another call. Names flashing: Ethan, Linda, CFO. Everything started at once. Like a chain reaction. But he didn't respond. To anyone. He just sat there, staring at the letter. As if he looked long enough, it would disappear. But it didn't. And in that moment, for the first time in his life, he understood. It wasn't that I had just left. It was that he had lost me. A long time ago. And me. I was sitting in my office in Boston, looking out the window. The city kept moving. Cars. People. No one knew that somewhere else, a story was collapsing. My phone vibrated. "Daniel." They received it. I nodded slightly, even though he couldn't see. "The reaction bad," he said. "Very bad. I didn't ask more. Didn't need to. Because I already knew what was happening. Not because I wanted them to suffer, but because the truth always finds its way to where it belongs. And this time, it arrived unavoidable. But this still wasn't the end. Because the biggest truth had not been revealed yet. Another call was coming. From someone I hadn't heard from in over 10 years. A week later, when everything began to settle, I received a call. An unknown number. But this time, I answered. Charlotte? A man's voice. Low, slow, hesitant. This is Robert. I went silent. A name I hadn't heard in over 10 years. Uncle Robert. My father's younger brother. The only one in the family who was never like the others. I'm listening, I said. Calm. I heard what happened, he said. The party, and the situation at the company. I didn't respond. Just waited. There's something, he paused. As if weighing whether he should say it. Something I should have told you a long time ago. The air in my room suddenly felt heavier. What is it? I asked. Quiet. That day, he began. When your father said he couldn't afford both of you going to school, that was a lie. I closed my eyes for a second. Not because I was surprised, but because I had always suspected it. I know, I said. No. He cut in. You don't know everything. A pause. Long. Before your mother passed away, she set up a separate fund. My heart skipped. What kind of fund? A college fund, just for you, he said. Enough for 4 years, at any school you chose. The space around me felt like it stretched. All sound faded. What happened to it? I asked. My voice was no longer the same. Robert exhaled. Your father used that money. He didn't need to say more. I already understood. But he did. For Ethan's MBA. Nothing shattered. No tears. Just a void. Deep. Cold. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. Not accusing. Just asking. I wanted to, he said, but I was afraid. Your father, he's not someone easy to confront. All of us chose silence. Silence. I let out a quiet laugh. Not amused. Just like everyone stayed silent for the past 12 years. He didn't argue. Because he couldn't. Your grandmother, he continued. She knew. My grip tightened slightly on the phone. She tried to stop it, but she couldn't. That's why she created another fund for you. I remembered her words. Every sentence. She knew everything I said. Yes, Robert replied. She couldn't recover the money, but she could make sure no one took anything from you again. Silence. Neither of us spoke. But something was shifting. Not anger. Not hatred. But clarity. Sharp. Unmistakable. Why are you telling me now? I asked. Because it's time for everything to stop. He said. You deserve the truth. I nodded slightly. Even though he couldn't see. Thank you, I said. And I meant it. The call ended. I put my phone down. Sat still. Didn't think. Didn't react immediately. Just sat there and let everything settle. 12 years ago, I thought I was abandoned because I wasn't good enough. Now, I understood. I wasn't abandoned. I was replaced. my future, was taken. Not because there wasn't enough money, but because they chose someone else. And the strangest part was that I didn't feel the need to go back. No confrontation, no demands, no need for an apology. Because now, everything was clear. No more proof needed. No more words required. The truth was enough. And it didn't make me weaker. It made me free. But the story still wasn't over. Because what happened next wasn't something I did. Wasn't something I said. It was the truth itself. Spreading. And when it spread, it didn't just change my life. It changed everything. 2 months after I sent that letter, everything began to surface. Not because of me. I didn't post anything, didn't talk to the press, didn't explain myself to anyone. But some stories, once they start leaking, can't be contained. In the business circles of Connecticut, news travels faster than you think. At first, it was whispers. Have you heard about Richard Evans? The daughter he mocked is the one who kept his company alive. Then came the questions. Northbridge Consulting is really hers. He didn't know. And then, they weren't questions anymore. They were conclusions. Evans Logistics started having problems. Not an immediate collapse, but slowly, inevitably. They lost 40% of their operational efficiency in less than 60 days. Contracts began to fall behind. Clients started complaining. Some partners quietly pulled away. Not loud, but enough for people to notice. Something was wrong. Ethan had only been CEO for 3 months, and he was already facing his first crisis. Not caused by the market, not caused by competitors, but by decisions from the past. Decisions he didn't even understand. My father returned to the company. No more glorious retirement. No more applause. Just a man trying to hold together what was already falling apart. But the biggest damage wasn't financial. It was reputation. In their world, reputation is everything. And once it cracks, everything else is only a matter of time. Someone once told me at an industry event Richard Evans used to be someone everyone wanted to work with. He paused, took a sip of his drink. Now, no one wants to be associated with that story. I didn't feel happy. No satisfaction. No sense of revenge. Just a strange feeling. Like something had finally ended, but not the way I expected. I didn't destroy them. I didn't take revenge. I just told the truth. And the truth did the rest. A year later, my life didn't change in some dramatic way. No big comeback moment. No scene where they apologized on their knees. No emotional reunion. Just everything slowly returned to where it belonged. My company kept growing. More clients, more diversity, more stability. Daniel was promoted. The team expanded. A new office overlooking the harbor. A life I built myself. No dependence, no proving. No need for validation. I started therapy. Not because I was weak, but because I understood some things need to be healed. Not to forget, but to make sure they no longer control you. I kept my grandmother's photo on my desk. Sometimes, I visit her grave, talk to her, as if she can still hear me. I made it. I said that once. Alone, in the quiet of a cemetery, and for the first time, I truly believed it. My family didn't completely disappear. Sometimes, a Christmas card still arrives. No return address. No message. Just a sign. But I don't respond. Not because I hate them, but because I don't need them anymore. And that is the biggest difference. I used to think my value came from being recognized by them. Now, I understand. My value comes from what I build when no one is watching, when no one believes in me, when no one stands beside me. I am not who they said I was. I never was. And neither are you. If you're in a place that makes you feel like you're not enough, remember this. Maybe the problem isn't you. Maybe you're just in the wrong place. You don't need everyone to believe in you. You just need to not give up on yourself. I didn't leave to win. I left to live. And in the end, I did. If you've ever had to walk away to save yourself, comment I made it.